upon your wrath. How's that for encouraging people to be angry? But earlier we were told in Proverbs 22:24 that one should, quote, make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go. Exodus 20:17 says, thou shalt not covet. That's one of the 10 commandments. Yet in 1 Corinthians 12:31, Paul says, covet earnestly the best gifts. So are we to covet or aren't we? 1 Corinthians 9:24 says that we should run so that ye may obtain. While Romans 9:16 says, so then it is not a matter of willing or of running, but of God's mercy. So do we run in order to obtain, or do we just sit and wait for God's mercy to grant our desires? According to Matthew 28:19, the followers of Jesus are to go into all the world to teach and to baptize. But how does one reconcile that statement with Paul's comments in 1 Corinthians 1:14 and 1:17 where he says, this is Paul speaking, I thank God that I baptized none of you, but Crispus and Gaius. For Christ sent me not to baptize, but to preach the gospel. Paul says that he was sent not to baptize, even though that flies in the face of the Great Commission in which Jesus told people, of course he's talking to his followers, to go into the world, into all the world, and baptize. And lastly, Galatians 6:2 says that we should bear one another's burdens to fulfill the law of Christ, while 3 verses later we are told that everyone shall bear his own burden. So who bears our burdens? Us or others? The number of biblical problems borders on the incredible, and far more are yet to come in future programs to prove as much. At the end of our 100 programs, more than enough examples will have been provided to convince any reasonably open-minded person that the Bible is light years from being the perfect word of a divine being. By the end of our series, additional bombs would only make the rubble bounce. In conclusion, and in support of our position, we might quote from one of the most famous of all apologetic works. I'm speaking of the book entitled Alleged Discrepancies of the Bible by John Halley. On the first 2 pages, he makes the following admissions. Quote, no candid and intelligent student of the Bible will deny that it contains numerous discrepancies. Of course, they avoid the word contradictions like it has the plague. That its statements taken prima facie, that means at their face, frequently contradict one another may safely be presumed. That eminent biblical critic, Moses Stewart, whose candor was commensurate with his erudition, means knowledge of Scripture, acknowledged that in our present copies of the Scriptures there are some discrepancies between different portions of them which no learning nor ingenuity can reconcile. Unquote, Halley. And I might add, there aren't just some, there are hundreds, as we'll see in future programs. Halley concludes, to the same effect, Archbishop Whately observes that the apparent contradictions of Scripture are numerous is too notorious to need to be insisted upon. Unquote. It's important to note that these are the words of well-known Christians, not secular humanists, atheists, agnostics, or other critics of Scripture. Equally important is the fact that apologists and their colleagues have made little or no effort to expose these errors, contradictions, and fallacies to the laity at large. keeping them under wraps as much as possible has clearly been a high priority. In far too many cases, those who really know the book for what it is and what it contains are fully aware of the fact that the Bible is a maze of contradictions, inconsistencies, and inaccuracies. As I've so often said, the Bible has more holes in it than a backdoor screen. And except for indoctrinated ideologues and propagandists, those who are fully aware of the book's contents don't even argue the point. Why try to prove that which is doomed from the outset? In large part, the fundamentalism versus liberalism split within Christianity can be attributed to the fact that millions of Christians no longer deny that the Bible has inadequacies and inaccuracies. That completes our presentation. And please join us later for the third edition of Biblical Errancy Commentary, when we'll continue showing why the Bible is nothing more than the flawed composition of some fallible human beings. Thank you for listening.